Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. This large jade plant behind me here is over 15 years old. I honestly lost track of exactly how old it is, but I just know it's very old. It's been pruned a number of times, and many years ago it started to get really droopy due to the weight of the stems and the leaves just pulling the branches down. So I did do a hard prune. Like I said, a number of years ago. It was absolutely terrifying, but it actually responded really well and it started to get that upright growth structure again. This is the plant that started my interest in how plants grow. I've been learning off of this one for, well, more than 15 years. So for today, I'm going to be pruning again, although it is December. I'll explain why I don't have an issue with that kind of throughout the video. And I'm also going to show you how to propagate the stems and leaves of a jade plant. So let's get into it. Before I start hacking this plant up, I'm going to talk about why I'm okay with pruning in December. Most times when you prune a plant, it is to promote new growth or branching. And typically that is done in the spring and summer months. The reason why you cut back or you don't typically prune in the winter is because the plant is receiving less sunlight because the days are shorter, the sun isn't as bright and intense, so you're probably not going to see much growth, or if any, on most of your house plants. So that's why you really don't prune when the plant is not actively growing, because it's not really going to be pushing out any new growth. Now the reason why I'm okay with it in December is because mine are under grow lights. So this is still replicating its natural sunlight. It's getting 14 hours of grow lights per day. So this one, I'm not too worried about if I prune it. Now, if you have a plant like mine where it needs to be pruned just because of the weight, or even if you want to get branches throughout the winter months, there's a couple things that you can do that are really easy. Obviously, supplement the sunlight or the natural sunlight with a grow light, which will help tremendously. Jade plants need about 6 hours of bright light throughout the day. It's not only good for jade plants, but it'll be basically good for any house plant. If it's not receiving enough light and you want it to continue to grow, then just give it a little bit more light. If your jade plant isn't receiving enough sunlight and you have a really bright window, stick it in the brightest window that you have, or the brightest area that you have. Move it closer to a window, just give it more light, and that can kind of spark some new growth as well. There's two ways that you can reduce the weight. Obviously the first one is just cutting off a section of the stem, but the second way is actually to defoliate. You just remove some leaves off of the stem. It's actually quite surprising how heavy each individual leaf is, and when you remove a few of them or a number of them, that is actually quite a huge weight reduction. So the way you do that is you just basically pinch the leaf off. So you go close to the stem and just kind of twist it off, and it pops off. And this can be propagated, so you can take, I'll just set it aside, you can take a number of leaves off. And what I typically like to do is I like to find the leaves that are closest to an area where it branches. Here, I'll find one. Where's a good one that I haven't done before? So right here, you can see there's an area where it branches out, and the leaves just below those branches, I like to remove those ones because these are typically the oldest leaves, because this was the last area of the stem when I made the cut, and then it has since branched out. So there should be another one back there, but it looks like, well, this one just fell off, but it looks like it has fallen off before. I'm going to share a couple of pruning techniques with you here as well before I actually start pruning. I'm just going to push this branch out of the way so I can show on this, on this little guy right here. So whenever I make, or whenever I decide to do pruning on my plant, I often start with branches that are growing downwards. I cut those off completely as I want the growth structure to remain upright. And when you have a branch that is starting to grow downwards, that's just like a little anchor. It's just going to weigh that branch down, causing stress on the stem and potentially causing that to break over time. So when I do pruning for shaping, I will look for an area of the stem like this. And whenever you make a cut, you always go above the leaves. So here's a section right here. And if you want the branches to grow in a certain way, say if I cut right here, just above these two leaves or this set of leaves, the new branches will always grow on the same side as the leaves just above like where you made the cut, or just below where you made the cut. So if I cut right here, The new branches will form from the same sides of the leaves, so the branches will come out this way and this way. So I'm going to start with this branch right here. This is the one that I noticed quite a while ago. It was starting to droop down quite heavily, so I'm going to start with this one first. And now I'm just going to look and to see if there is any natural branching on this one. So it looks like it has gotten a small little branch over time right here. Oh, another leaf just fell off. So I'm going to cut this. Here's the branching node right here, and I'm going to cut right up here. You can see there's a little branch right there that's kind of left behind. This one is right there, and then I have this kind of larger cutting, which I'll show you how to propagate that in a little bit. So this branch, this smaller one, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's starting on a 6th node. I'm going to cut it back right here. I'm going to have the branches, or the new branches, come out this way. So I'm going to cut that just like that. So now when I stand back, this branch is no longer like weighing down heavily that way. It's already kind of bounced up. See, here's a really long section of the stem that you can see I've made a prune here. It's lost all its leaves over time, but it's got a nice woody stem. So I'm gonna see if I can get that to branch out again. If not, then I can cut it right back and let it regrow. And yes, you can cut woody stems, but just be aware, I think there's a spot back here. It does take a long time to regrow. I thought I had, yeah, this one right back here. You can't really see it. I'll see if I can turn it around here in a little bit, but it does take much longer for a woody portion of the stem to regrow than it would a nice kind of pliable green section like up here. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this right here. I'm just going to see if there is any branching down here. Well, there's one right here. So I'm going to cut maybe one above that, like that, because now the new branches will grow from here, from this side. This one branches right here. So I'm just going to cut these back. So again, I got a handful of cuttings. I'm going to show you afterwards how many cuttings I actually have. It's actually quite surprising. This branch, it looked like it was starting to grow down, but it corrected itself. I'm just going to chop it back to here. This one is one long stem. I'm going to cut this one back to like there. And I should say as well, pruning your houseplants is really healthy for them. Jade plants, they love to be pruned. It just, for whatever reason, it just sparks new growth. They perk up. So don't think you're going to kill your jade. I was absolutely petrified. I was terrified the first time that I pruned this plant. I thought it's going to be an absolute goner. If you're concerned about how your plant grows, just do a small little prune. Like, so you take a branch like this and just cut a small little section off. Pay attention over time, over the next few months, to see how it responds. It will branch out, I guarantee it. Well, I should also mention too that pruning a jade plant frequently for branching and that sort of thing, it also thickens up the stem. So instead of the plant focusing all its growth on its vertical growth, you chop the top off, and that stimulates growth, branching in those areas, but it also thickens up the stem. It tells the plant to produce a much stronger support system. Whenever I make a prune, I just kind of stand back for a second and I look at the overall shape of the plant just to kind of envision how it's going to grow, and just to see if there's any kind of awkward stems like this one that is just kind of flopping over. So these are the two stems that I just pruned off there, but I have this kind of longer one that's just kind of flopped right over. So I am going to cut it back, not crazy, but there is some branches right there. I'm just going to cut kind of right below that. So I'm going to take off a couple of these leaves just so I can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to cut that back just below that branch right there. Whoops. So this large stem can be propagated, and now there is definitely less weight on that branch from just kind of flopping over. So I think those were kind of the problem areas that I was looking at or wanting to prune. Now I'm just going to go around the plant and just kind of snip off the tops of the rest of the stems, just so that it can promote branching. So you can see right here, this is where I've previously made a prune. I'm going to remove those larger leaves that are just at the site where it kind of bifurcates. So I'm going to remove those. And then, like I said earlier, I only let like 2 or 3 nodes. Once the branch starts to grow, then I like to cut it back. So 2 or 3 nodes will kind of make it to that spot right there. So I'm going to chop the top off there. That'll promote branching. And then I'm just going to do the same with this one. I'm just going to cut just the little tip off, just like that. Okay, I've pretty much made the cuts off of all the tops. You can see they've all been trimmed, but I wanted to show this problem branch right here. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say I typically cut off branches that grow downwards. So you can see at one point, this branch was probably like that, but just due to the weight of the branch, it is completely flopped over. It's now growing downwards. So I'm not going to cut this one off completely, but if I reduce the weight of this stem like that, it'll probably regain its upright growth structure. So I'm going to cut it off. Right here, there is a branch, and I know that previously the leaves were on this side of the, like the same side of the stem or where the branches come from. So I don't want, if I cut right here, there's going to be a branch that grows. So if I cut just above this branch, there will potentially be a new branch that grows from right here, but unfortunately it'll be growing downwards, and this one will grow basically straight up. So I'm going to go to the next node and cut that off right here. Whoops. Because the new branches will now grow from the side of the cutting, and I'll get some branching that'll come out this way and fill in this area because it looks pretty bare right now. So as a zoomed out shot, you can see for the most part it all looks fairly uniform. There's not one area that is sticking out more than the other. So I think this is where I'm going to leave it for now. Okay, look at all of these cuttings that I have that I can now propagate. I'll probably just give them away just because I don't have any more room for jade plants. But now I'm going to show you how to propagate them by leaf and stem cutting. This is super easy. So all you do if you want to take some leaf cuttings is just kind of twist off those leaves like I showed you earlier. Let the ends callus over for a few hours, or you can let it do it for like a day or so. So set them aside on your counter, on your table, whatever. Same thing with a stem cutting. You can prune it to size. So if you don't want a cutting that large, you can cut it back. Just remove some of the lower leaves. I'm just going to remove a few so that you have a cutting that looks like this. Let it callus over, again, for a few hours or a day, so just set it aside. It's not going to die, it's not going to dry up or anything like that. These can actually survive for an extended period of time on their own. That's why you sometimes see like a leaf on the floor of a store. You pick it up and it's actually got some roots. It doesn't need soil to root, but I'm going to explain all that here in a second. Let it callus over and then grab a container of soil. Whoops. Once the cutting is calloused over, then all you do is literally stick it in a container of dry soil. Now, I don't water these for probably at least 10 days. The plant will root itself. It draws all the moisture and nutrients that it needs off of its big, thick, juicy leaves. So by you adding water when you first plant it, there is no roots to uptake that water, so it's simply going to sit in soggy soil, and that's where you're going to get that stem rot. So don't water it for probably the first 10 days. If you're unsure if it's rooted or not, just slightly pull up on the plant. If you feel resistance or slight resistance, it's started the rooting process. Don't pull it out of the pot, and yeah, just let it continue to root. Once it's established its root system, then I will lightly water. I won't saturate the entire pot of soil. I'll just lightly water around the stem. Jade plants have very fine, very thin roots, so you don't want to water it too much. I have other like how to water a jade plant video if you want to go check those out. But you don't have to water this one heavily. it will continue to draw all the moisture and nutrients off of the cutting. Sometimes you will get some leaves that'll shrivel up and die off. That's okay. It will start to push out some new growth. So that's all you do for the stem cuttings. Same thing with the leaf cuttings. Let them callus over, and then I just lay them on top of a container of soil like this. Again, they will establish their own roots from the moisture and nutrients from the leaves. And the cool thing about this is you can actually see the progress of the roots. So you'll see a few little thin roots poking through. Once it's established roots, just lightly water at the area where the roots are, and eventually you will get a new growth point coming out from those roots. It's pretty cool growing an entirely new plant from a single leaf. The 3 plants that I have upstairs were grown from a cutting probably no larger than this, and it's taken about 5 years to get to that size. It does take a long time to root from the leaf method. It'll push out growth, and you'll probably get just a little growth point like that probably in about a year. So it does take a long time. Yeah, so it's really satisfying growing plants from leaves and stems. It's a nice way to learn and to watch how a jade plant grows. These are honestly really good plants to learn from. So yeah, I have many care videos and watering videos if you want to go check those out. But otherwise, I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Hopefully I covered all the topics in regards to pruning and propagating a jade plant even when it's in winter. Just give it more light. That's pretty much it. If you want to watch another houseplant video, click this one right here. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye.